What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're going to be branching a little bit outside of the usual breakdowns on the channel, and I just wanted to have a conversation about Tier 1 game modes as well as the lack of hardcore game modes in Modern Warfare 2. Because unfortunately, Tier 1 is absolutely not a replacement for hardcore game modes. There are some very key differences here, and while I'm not a hardcore main player myself and never really have been, I do feel like it sucks for those players that do prefer hardcore in Call of Duty to not even have their game mode available for them to play. It's always been a staple game mode in COD, and it's simply not here in Modern Warfare 2. Another thing I want to be clear about at the beginning of the video here is I'm not necessarily advocating for the removal of the Tier 1 game modes. I think Tier 1 does have a place in the game, and I see why certain people lean toward that direction. It is very immersive, and for many people they like that style of gameplay that I guess feels a bit more realistic. Having said that, I do feel like hardcore is still very important to have in a Call of Duty game, and I've been seeing a lot of backlash against this from those hardcore players, and I just want to amplify their voice a little bit here. So first, let's get into the differences between Tier 1 and Hardcore, because you guys may not even know what those differences are exactly. The first big thing is the health value. In Tier 1 game modes, we have 50 HP in public matches, although it defaults to 30 HP in private matches, which was really confusing. But I did do the testing in public matches now, and it looks like that threshold is exactly 50 HP. However, it looks like you also get a significantly higher headshot multiplier, and I was able to do that with the testing here with the gun that has the lowest headshot damage out of any of the guns in the game. I was still getting one-shot kills to the head, even though I'm only dealing 28 damage per shot to the head. It's also interesting that in Tier 1 game modes, we do regenerate health, just like in core game mode. So if you get hurt after a gunfight, you just have to chill for a little bit, and you will get back up to full health. Whereas in hardcore game modes, the big difference here is we have 30 HP by default, and therefore a ton of the guns in the game are going to be a one-shot kill anywhere in the body, and we don't automatically regenerate health in hardcore game modes. So what this means is in hardcore, guns tend to be way more lethal. It's much better to go for those long shot camos, for instance, in hardcore, because your gun is just going to be that much more lethal. You don't have to hit a bunch of consecutive shots. You just have to hit one bullet in many cases. But those are just the health differences between Tier 1 and Hardcore, and that's already a pretty big difference there. Next, let's talk about the heads-up display elements and the difference between these two. In Tier 1, we get essentially no heads-up display. Like, the only heads-up display you could say that we've got here is on the bottom right, you can see a round dot to show that your field upgrade is charged, and you will see square dots when you earn kill streaks, showing you that you have your kill streaks earned. Outside of that, there's no heads-up display in the game, unless your team gets a UAV, in which case you will have a minimap for the duration of that UAV. When we compare that to Hardcore, at least in recent years with Call of Duty, we always have a compass active on the top of the screen, even if you don't have a UAV in the air. Although, just like with Tier 1, you will get your minimap up only when your team has a UAV up. Hardcore also has a kill feed, and this is actually a really big deal, at least in my experience. So then you can see a whole lot more what's going on. If you hear a gunfight take place somewhere near you, you can have a quick glance at your kill feed to see if your teammate killed the enemy or the enemy killed your teammate, and that can really affect your decision making in game. Or sometimes you just want to know if you got a headshot or a body shot kill with your gun, and the kill feed would really clearly show that for you, whereas in Tier 1, there's no proper indication for this with a heads-up display element. Going off of that, another thing we don't have in Tier 1 game modes that we normally do have in hardcore game modes is a hit marker when you shoot enemy players. In Tier 1, when you shoot an enemy, the only indications you've got that you're hitting that player are blood spatters off of the character model, or the kill audio cue that plays every time you get a kill. And again, this may appeal to a lot of players that are looking for like a super immersive experience. Maybe they don't want to see those hit markers. I get it. I see why people like it, but I just want to point out it's not hardcore. It's very different from hardcore game modes, and it's not a proper replacement for hardcore. Next up on that topic of heads-up display, some less important elements that I still want to point out that are different between Tier 1 and hardcore. First up, there's no enemy name or calling card displayed when you get a kill, so you can't really see who you're killing, like the name of the person you're killing. Additionally, when you complete a challenge, for instance, in the game, maybe you're grinding for camos, which is oftentimes what people would use hardcore game modes for, you don't really get to keep track of that camo progress in-game. You don't get those indicators letting you know that, hey, you completed that challenge that you're working towards, so you don't have to keep going for it. And on a similar note to that, alongside the normal hit marker that we'd see displayed, we also don't get those indicators letting us know that we got a headshot kill, or a long shot kill, or a point blank kill. And these are often really important for tracking that camo progress. And hardcore modes traditionally have this, whereas Tier 1 doesn't have this. And overall, those are the primary differences between Tier 1 and Hardcore. There's probably a few little things as well that I didn't cover in today's video, but like I said, I'm not really a dedicated Hardcore player, so it's harder for me to pick up on these things. But even with the stuff that I have pointed out, it's very obvious that Tier 1 is not Hardcore and it's not a proper replacement. Instead, Tier 1 is much more along the lines of the realism mode in Modern Warfare 2019. In fact, I believe it's essentially identical to the realism mode in that game, aside from player health. I believe in the realism mode in Modern Warfare 2019, we actually had 100 health to the body, but we just had a significantly boosted headshot multiplier, so any gun was a one-shot kill no matter what to the head. But outside of that, Tier 1 is the realism mode. And I just find it really strange that Modern Warfare 2019 had both hardcore as well as realism in the game. They work just fine side by side, and yet by all accounts, based on everything that we can see on the player's side, it seemed like hardcore was significantly more popular than realism. In fact, I think they even removed realism for a portion of time from the game. And also, I just remember back in the life cycle of that game, if I searched for a realism game mode, it would take me a really long time to find a lobby, whereas in hardcore, I never had an issue getting into a lobby really quickly, and that to me indicates that there were likely a whole lot more people playing hardcore than there were playing realism. So why did they bring back realism but not hardcore to Modern Warfare 2? I'm really confused by this decision. I guess it's just one of those Infinity Ward things where it's like they insist they know what's best even if it goes against what the data is saying, and they just remain stubborn on sort of like pushing that on the community rather than reacting to the community. At least that's the impression that I'm getting here, but at the end of the day, this whole video is just me advocating for those hardcore players out there. Even though I'm not personally super invested in this, I think it is very important to have a hardcore game mode in a Call of Duty game. It's been a staple forever in this franchise. And I can only imagine if the tables were flipped for some reason and they just removed core from the game and your only options were to play realism or hardcore, how much would that suck? Like, I don't think I'd be playing the game at all if that were the case. So I just really feel for those hardcore players out there, and I really hope Infinity Ward is willing to bring hardcore into the game at some point down the road, while still maintaining some level of support for Tier 1 game modes as well. I think they should just go with whichever game mode is more popular, that's the one that gets more playlists added to it, whereas the one that's less popular maybe gets limited in some sense so the player base isn't split up too much. And with that, that's pretty much everything I wanted to say about this topic in today's video. Although I am very curious to hear from you guys in the comments down below. What do you think about the fact that we don't have hardcore game modes in Modern Warfare 2 and instead we just have Tier 1? And also, what are your thoughts on Tier 1? Like, if we had hardcore and Tier 1 both in the game at once and you had to choose one or the other, which one would you be playing? Do you actually prefer Tier 1 or do you lean more in the direction of hardcore? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.